The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Hey, welcome everyone for this week's episode of Breaking Free of Psyops. I'm very happy to be joined by everyone watching today live. Just adjusting my camera. I'm realizing it's a little bit off. That's okay. Whatever. Welcome. And I did something a little bit different. Usually with these shows, I prepare some formal presentation, as I think everybody who's accustomed to seeing this every Monday has noticed, except this Monday, I did not do that. The reason why I did not do that partially is because I was traveling. I just landed. I got back from Florida. I was down there for an interview, which should hopefully be going up pretty soon. I don't really need this. I guess this earbud. Dealing with, matters of secret history and big ideas and battles in science. So that was a fun thing on the Danny Jones podcast. So that I imagine would be going up in the coming week or so, and I'll be sharing that. But we just released a movie. So Cynthia, myself, Jason Dahl, our movie-making genius friend, have been working for about 4 or 5 months. We got the ball rolling on the script in January, and we started working pretty much nonstop since that time. And we finally finished the work. We announced the release a couple of days ago on Saturday. And so I'm right now in a state where I need everybody's attention to both watch it and then once watching it is done, to encourage other people to watch, because this is the sort of thing that spreads by word of mouth. We don't have a big publicity budget or mass campaign or marketing program in that sense. So I do rely on listeners, followers, people who are truth seekers like yourselves to take it all in, try to internalize as much as possible. We even produced a booklet, a special report to accompany the film, and then do your best to amplify and encourage your friends, your family to watch it, use social media. And this particular film is called Black Sun Rising, the Esoteric Roots of Fascism, Past and Present. The book, same name, pretty much, same name for the book. Today, what I'm going to do is play about 23 or so minutes of the 75-minute documentary. Typically speaking, I think what we've done so far is we've made a 5-minute preview for people who want to just get a sense of the story, get a sense of why we did this. So that the first 5 minutes is free, and we're going to go further. We're going to go a couple of chapters in to this. It's broken down into like 9 chapters. The reason why we're doing this and why we chose to do this is because Hitlerism is being revived. That's a thing. I'm sure those who have either listened to Tommy Robinson, have followed the Unite the Right movement from Charlottetown all the way up through England, and the Revive the Kingdom rallies that typically is overseen by Tommy Robinson, that is assisted often with interventions by Elon Musk. Yes, Hidden Bunter. This is streaming on Rumble as well. I don't know where you're watching it, but it is streaming on Rumble as well. Oh, is the movie on Rumble is what you're asking me? No, the movie is currently not on Rumble. but if you go to the chat, you found it, Bunter Hayden, sorry. If you go to the chat that is currently visible, you will see in my opening little contributions to the chat links to the film, which is also going to be in the comment section under this Rumble video. So all that to say, the Revive the Kingdom or Save the Kingdom rallies increasingly features more and more imagery of Templarism, the banner of the Holy Sepulchre, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Templar flags that were used as banners to champion the patriotism of the Crusades 1,000 years ago, which was really a ritual bloodbath. It was a black magician run killing field for centuries. And there is the essence, the dark sulfuric soul of the Crusades and Templarism and the Gnostic chivalric orders that were created to oversee that bloodbath, including the Knights of Malta, then known as the Knights Hospitaller, the Teutonic Knights, the Teutonic Order, as well as the Templars themselves, were all at the core of Nazism. But it's also what we could see current social engineers trying to nudge the conservative psyche ever more towards. The left wing has had their own variations of radicalization and social engineering around this idea of a crusade against global warming, a crusade against, Christianity, which has been the perversion of leftism, especially after the murder of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and the transformation of the Democratic Party into a conduit of this kind of woke radicalization. On the right, don't think that the right is on this Manichaean side of pure light against the darkness of the left. There's a darkness, a co-darkness, a mirror darkness for the right as well. And it's always been that case going back to ancient times. And it is a formula that works really well, unfortunately. And people always tend to fall into this trap again and again and again. And I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting sick of reading about it. I'm getting sick of watching it. And again, when one sees or listens to the messaging of Nick Fuentes, who has called on repeated instances from 2018 to the present, Hitler as the good guy of World War II, the maligned hero of the story against the evil, villainous Russians, and Stalin, who were the real bad guys. Hitler was just, an enemy of the Jew bankers. But because the Jew bankers won the war, you see, we have been told, they also wrote the history books, and thus everything that we have been told about World War II, about the bad guys, it's the opposite game. The bad guys are all the good guys, and the good guys were actually the bad guys. So while it's definitely the case that history is written by the winners, you don't want to necessarily play that overly simplistic game either, which too many are falling into the trap, and thus taking in what Nick Fuentes is saying about Hitler as the cool good guy, or even Stu Peters, who has done similar things, painting Hitler as the good guy of World War II. Because again, the idea is to do it all over again, and to take, just like they did with conservatives disgusted by the left woke trannyism of the 1920s Weimar liberalism, which was largely the consequence of people going crazy due to World War I, which destroyed a lot of lives. It drove people into madness, on top of the suffocation of the Weimar hyperinflation and the controlled demolition of the German economy that wrecked the economy, wrecked people's lives. Middle class became impoverished became dead. Rich people became even, we're jumping out of the windows too. It was across the board. And that resulted in two different expressions of crazy. Cross-dressing drag shows across Germany was one thing that was rampant. People were just letting go completely of all idea of right and wrong, and Christian values of morality were all thrown to the junk bin by many people who didn't believe in anything after World War II. So they were like, I don't believe if everything religious has been a lie, because why did God allow this to happen to me? My idea thus of God must have been a lie. There cannot be a God. Well, how do you find fulfillment if you don't have any type of metaphysical, spiritual mooring at that point? Well, hedonism, right? The new religion of of hedonism, of the flesh, becomes the new thing of rejecting right and wrong based on the idea that maybe it was the belief in right and wrong that caused World War I to begin with. And if we didn't have right and wrong and the belief in that, and we didn't have the belief in God that so many people were willing to die for, then maybe we would not be suffering. We would not have wars. So many idiots were led to believe. And that created such an extreme ugliness that people who were still hanging on to their conservative faith and sensibilities were thus radicalized to the opposite extreme, where they were induced to see, well, oh, this is the devil incarnate right now in the hedonistic world that's taking over my society, that's decaying the minds of the lost generation, right? That broken generation coming of age during World War I, who were just floating as nihilists, including in the United States. And maybe that's all the devil. And they were they induced to double down on a crusade against the devil, a crusade, using the image of the Archangel Michael or St. George and the cross of St. George as their new rallying point of a revival of Templarism to restore the dignity and the values of Germanic civilization. And these types of more radicalized conservatives were propelled to then rally around a strongman who could bring dignity, with the help of a little hashtag fire, an inside job or two didn't hurt, back to their nation, back to their civilization. And this type of people didn't realize how they were being weaponized as well. Just like the left was being weaponized, so too were the right. So I don't want any of that to happen again, though I see it. I see the signs of it. I see the rehabilitation of Hitler. And so that's enough of me talking just straight up the bat to set the stage for watching now about 23 minutes of our new film, Black Sun Rising, Esoteric Nazism, Past and Present. Because again, it's not about the past. The reason why we study the past is to understand the present and thus to be able to problem solve for the future. So the past is truly about, if you're honest, about trying to plan for the future and not fall into the traps that destroyed so much potential in the past when good people didn't understand what they were walking into and good potentials were flushed. So I hope that this is going to stream. It might be a little bit choppy in my experience whenever I've done these streaming sessions of a film, especially from Substack. Occasionally the visuals get a little bit choppy. So I do apologize, but people can watch the full video for $5 on my Substack, on Cynthia's Substack as well, or on Atlux, which is going to be in the description box. It's another streaming service where people can buy the film for a lifetime for like $20 or just rent it for $4.50 on this new service. So let's just watch a bit of a movie now.
Is it possible that nearly 80 years after World War II, the dream of a new global fascist Reich envisioned by Hitler and Mussolini may yet be upon us? With the increasingly unavoidable reality that much of our history has been composed of nothing but dark lies, the popularity in conspiracy theories has grown in leaps and bounds. And while that may not be such a bad thing, since all of our history and present world has been shaped by conspiracies for good and for bad, it must be acknowledged that not all conspiracy theories are true, and some are simply wrong. But how do we differentiate the false from the true? one particularly startling vein of conspiracy narrative that has gained popularity in recent years, and which has targeted a large number of Christian-leaning conservatives, involves the idea that Hitler may not have been the villain, but was in fact the hero of World War II. Due to heavy doses of propaganda, an echo chamber of narrative shapers, and also incredibly evil behavior from Israel's own elite obsessed with a Greater Israel program involving the ethnic cleansing of much of the Middle East, it is understandable that many well-intentioned people have come to believe that the cause of all the world's problems are, once again, the Jews. And of course, if this simplistic equation be true, then it logically follows that literally every movement that hated the Jews throughout history can be quickly given a clean, rehabilitated gloss, including the Crusader Knights that launched the Crusades 1,000 years ago, and of course, the Nazi movement of the 20th century. Some examples of the type of pro-Nazi propaganda that is emerging onto the scene in today's world includes, but is not limited to, the 10-part neo-Nazi series Europa: The Last Battle, and the newest film produced by the former mercenary turned rapper turned conspiracy guru Stu Peters, dubbed Occupied. Influencers like Nick Fuentes have arisen seemingly out of nowhere, garnering tens of millions of followers who don't mind the fact that the young provocateur loudly asserts that Hitler was a cool, patriotic leader who led a cool, patriotic movement to restore the dignity of the German population. And let's not forget Kanye West, who has released clothing lines featuring swastikas and has featured Hitler's speeches infused into his popular music. So, while a positive rehabilitation of Hitler's image is undoubtedly underway, and it is also worth asking, do those who promote the rebranding of Hitler's image have any idea what the Führer and his higher command were doing in Wewelsburg Castle? Do people know why the black magicians of the Thule Society and Himmler's New Templar Order were attempting to invoke demons to help usher in an age of Kali Yuga, resetting all of humanity for a 1,000-year Reich? Does Nick Fuentes or his followers have any idea why Hitler literally rewrote the entire Bible, introducing an Aryan Christ and new commandments such as keep thy blood pure and honor thy Führer? Do you know why the top command of the Nazi elite were never punished after World War II? And why organizations like NATO, the European Union, or even US and British Special Forces continued a Nazi vision for creating a reset of all of human civilization, in most cases directly under Nazi supervision throughout the entirety of the Cold War? Do you think that any of this may affect the world that you are currently living in? Let's explore that.
I just want to say straight up that that map, I was blown away with. I even I asked Jason if he could do this, showcasing the parallels between the growth of Nazi Germany to its peak, and compare that with the European Union and its growth. But just seeing what he was able to do with that animation, it blew me away. And it makes it that much more real. It's not that different. It's actually not different at all, especially when you consider now the NATO mapping and the growth of NATO on top of that. It's pretty wild. So all that to say, Jason did some incredible visual insertions to take a lot of very abstract, tough ideas and make them very, very artistically intelligible, including these little transitions. There's going to be 9 of these transitions in the film to showcase I think it's 9 chapters that we have, which I hope people are enjoying. So we're going to watch one or two more chapters, and then we'll open it up for a bit of discussion. And I did see Eleanor, I believe, who had the question about the Ellen and John Foster Dulles. I'll put that in the back burner, and when we get to discussion time, we'll bring that out. So let's keep on watching the film and get to let's see what the first chapter is.
Despite being hailed as a devoted Christian, all evidence points to the disturbing fact that Adolf Hitler was himself an occultist, having been initiated into the secret doctrine by his personal guru, Dietrich Eckart, founder of the German Workers' Party, who said of his young initiate at a 1923 meeting of the Thule Gesellschaft,
"Follow Hitler, he will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. I have initiated him into the secret doctrine, opened his centers in vision, and given him the means to communicate with the powers. Do not mourn for me. I shall have influenced history more than any German."
In the final chapter of Mein Kampf, Hitler wrote of his mentor,
"I should like to mention the name of a man who devoted his life to reawakening his and our people. Through his writing and his ideas, and finally through positive action. I mean, Dietrich Eckart."
Many know the name of Aleister Crowley, a famous black magician of the 20th century, sometimes known as the Great Beast 666, who aspired to usher in a 1,000-year Reich of Horus. Yet Crowley is typically treated like a caricature of pop culture, an icon featured on the cover of Beatles albums or in Ozzy Osbourne music or featured in comic books. But few know that Crowley's satanic doctrine of Thelema was infused directly into the Nazi high command before and during World War II by his leading disciple, J.F.C. Fuller, Grand Master of the Argentum Astrum Lodge, founded by Crowley in 1907. J.F.C. Fuller was a major general of the British military and is famous as the innovator of tank warfare, whose doctrines are still taught across military colleges to the present day. Fuller would serve as Crowley's contact in British and German occult circles, and would also be the lieutenant of the head of the British Union of Fascists, Sir Oswald Mosley, who would have become the Prime Minister of England had Nazism successfully taken control of the island empire. It is worth recollecting that Oswald Mosley's grandson, Louis Mosley, today serves as the CEO of Palantir UK, overseeing the growth of a new surveillance state alongside Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel. In his book Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order, investigator William Ramsey writes,
Adolf Hitler and Aleister Crowley, the great black magicians of the 20th century, shared similar ideologies. Their worldviews were influenced by the European occult movements of the late 19th and early 20th century. Informed by the ideas of Freemasonry and Theosophy, both of these significant personalities supported the doctrines of the survival of the fittest, the primacy of the human will, and the ideal of a feudal slave state.
This cosmology adored by Hitler of the secret doctrine and the belief in supernatural beings from the beyond who assist initiates in dominating the world is pure theosophy, as advanced by the figure of Madame Blavatsky and modified to the German psyche in this particular case. Among the practices of the powerful Thule Society embedded within the core of the Nazi SS and headed by Dietrich Eckart was the belief in a mystical fluid named Vril, which derived its name from a British fictional novel written by 19th century Rosicrucian high priest Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton, dubbed The Coming Race. Bulwer-Lytton's fantasy novel of an ancient race of superior beings living within the hollow earth, telepathically commanding human-like robots while preparing to invade the lesser evolved surface races of man, was a living gospel for many of the most powerful Nazis. The mysterious etheric fluid which permeates this master race invented by Bulwer Lytton was dubbed Virilia, and its name was literally taken up by the Nazi Vril Society in the early 1920s. The Nazi concept of Thule was based on Blavatsky's notion of Hyperborea, where a mythical root race of super beings supposedly seeded humanity's master races millennia ago, which gave rise to what Hitler believed was the Aryan races, and Nazi expeditions to the Earth's poles had been driven by the belief in the mythical Hyperborean Thule homeland. It is noteworthy that the singular US military base in Greenland was named the Thule Base for over 60 years until it was rebranded as the Pitufik Space Force Base in 2020. This would also be the same year that the Finnish Air Force would finally retire the Nazi swastika symbol, which had represented Finland's military identity since Hermann Göring donated Finland's first military aircraft to the Hyperborean nation in 1919. The Thule Society initiates strove to practice the magical workings developed by Bulwer Lytton's Rosicrucian followers, which included both Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, and organized a network of witches endowed with powers to channel demonic messages for their Aryan warlock handlers amidst heavy doses of sexual rites, orgies, sacrifice, and drugs. The Thule Society itself served as a subsection of the earlier Germanen Order founded in 1912. Occult researcher Peter Levenda writes that it
had an impressive series of initiatory rituals, replete with knights in shining armor, wise kings, mystical bards, and forest nymphs, including a Masonic-style program of secrecy, initiation, and mutual cooperation.
It cannot be overstated that the Thule Society was a major influence on the leading strata of Nazi high command, which included Alfred Rosenberg, Rudolf Hess, Hermann Göring, Hitler's personal physician Dr. Theodor Morell, and Heinrich Himmler, the chief of the New Templar Order. While it cannot be proven that Hitler himself was an official member, his mentor Dietrich Eckart certainly was. It is strange that many conservative patriots and alt-media influencers have come to believe that Adolf Hitler was a courageous Christian nationalist who should be admired for his resistance to secret societies and atheistic Bolshevism. But as we will now see, Hitler's strange version of Christianity smelled a lot like sulfur. The Reichsbible was the product of a deeper insidious infiltration of German culture by a sub-branch of the theosophical followers of Madame Blavatsky, who had spearheaded the Rosicrucian revival in England and the USA in the 19th century. Founded in 1875, Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society attempted to create a syncretic New World religion that would be a hodgepodge of various world mystery religions, which Aldous Huxley later celebrated as the perennial philosophy. In Blavatsky's syncretic system, the Western world was introduced to the swastika, Hermeticism, Kabbalah, esoteric Buddhism, and Kali Isis Earth Mother Goddess worship. Blavatsky also introduced the West to a new esoteric spirituality premised on a belief in spirit beings moving humanity through evolutionary phases of root races, leading up to the highest and most pure Teutonic race expressed by pure-blooded Germanic tribes. As she described throughout her secret doctrine published in 1888, this Teutonic race was to be the last phase of the Aryan fourth root race and would usher in the emergence of the fifth root race of transhumans, which in the German lexicon became known as the Übermenschen. Of course, Blavatsky and her followers were led to believe that they were on the side of angels in this cosmic battle, being promoters of light and life. However, Blavatsky also made it clear that her New World religion would be devoted to Lucifer and would require the destruction of conventional Christianity. Describing her devotion to Satanism, Blavatsky wrote,
"That which the clergy of every dogmatic religion, preeminently the Christian, points out as Satan, the enemy of God, is in reality the highest divine spirit, occult wisdom on earth, in its naturally antagonistic character to every worldly evanescent illusion, dogmatic or ecclesiastical religions included."
Branches of this Luciferian society occupied the passions and the thoughts of the inner elites among the Nazi SS. An exoteric, pseudo-Christian front would be promoted for the uninitiated masses. This fake Christian movement took the form of an organization ironically called the German Christians, which emerged with Hitler's 1933 acquisition of totalitarian power as Germany's Führer. The Berlin leader of the German Christians was named Dr. Reinhold Krauss, who demanded that Christianity be redefined in accord with the ambitions of the new 1,000-year Reich envisioned by the Nazi High Command. As such, Krauss believed that the church must be purged of everything
un-German in worship and confession, liberation from the Old Testament with its Jewish morality of profit and its stories of cattle traders and pimps.
In Hitler's perverse version of Christianity, a new Reichsbible was published, which revamped the Ten Commandments, removed "Thou shalt not kill," and added new commandments such as keep the blood pure and your marriage holy, honor your Führer and master, and joyously serve the people with work and sacrifice. Additionally, biblical stories that suggested Jesus had Jewish heritage were rewritten, even going so far as to proclaim that Jesus was not the Son of God, but rather the product of Mary's midnight tryst with a pure-blooded Roman soldier. The Nazi Reichsbible also rewrote all sections of the New Testament that had made any reference to the Jewish heritage of either Jesus or his apostles, recasting them all as Aryan supermen. Hitler's disdain for the Jews as an inferior genetic stock is no secret, but his disdain for Christianity is far less understood. On October 10, 1941, Hitler stated that
Christianity is a rebellion against natural law, a protest against nature. Taken to its logical extreme, Christianity would mean the systematic cultivation of the human failure.
The reason for this hatred was outlined on July 12, 1941, when he expressed his disgust for the Jewish origins of Christianity and his assertion that his idealized National Socialism could never coexist with religion.
National Socialism and religion cannot exist together. The heaviest blow that ever struck humanity was the coming of Christianity. Bolshevism is Christianity's illegitimate child. Both are inventions of the Jew. The deliberate lie in the matter of religion was introduced into the world by Christianity. Let it not be said that Christianity brought man the life of the soul, for that evolution was in the natural order of things.
The Nazi SS discouraged traditional church ceremonies in favor of marriage consecrations, while Christmas was rebranded as Yulefest when the Nazis took power in 1933, which began to emphasize the winter solstice origins of the holiday. Santa Claus was transformed from the Christian Saint Nicholas into the Norse god Odin, and both Mary and Jesus were portrayed as blonde Aryans. This rebranding followed a model developed by Hitler as early as 1913 in a watercolor painting of Jesus and Mary. Christian baptisms were increasingly replaced with name-giving ceremonies officiated by a Nazi officer at an altar, often featuring a portrait of Adolf Hitler. Despite his use of Christian terms in his public speeches and such writings as Mein Kampf, the truth was that Hitler despised the Bible, writing in 1940,
"The religions are all alike, no matter what they call themselves. They have no future, certainly not for the Germans. Fascism, if it likes, may come to terms with the church. So shall I. Why not? That will not prevent me from tearing up Christianity, root and branch, and annihilating it in Germany. We will wash off the Christian veneer and bring out a religion peculiar to our race."
According to Prussian SS officer Hermann Rauschning, Hitler described his views on Christianity, stating,
"Our peasants have not forgotten their true religion. It still lives. The peasant will be told what the church has destroyed for him. The whole secret knowledge of nature, of the divine, the shapeless, the demonic. We shall wash off the Christian veneer and bring out a religion peculiar to our race. Through the peasantry, we shall really be able to destroy Christianity, because there is in them a true religion rooted in nature and blood."
The esoteric psychologist Carl Jung, who was president of the German Psychiatric Society from 1933 until 1939, had provided an official assessment of Hitler's psychological profile to OSS chief Alan Dulles, noting that the Führer considered himself nothing less than an avatar of the Norse god Odin. Despite attacking both Christianity and Judaism, the Nazi high command saw the value in the institution of Christianity as a tool of geopolitical control. They even went so far as to ensure that the German churches would serve as extensions of the state, loyal to the surrogate god of the state itself. Hans Kell, Nazi Minister of Church Affairs, emphasized this view, stating,
Dr. Zöllner and Catholic Bishop of Munster, Count Galen, have tried to make clear to me that Christianity consists in faith in Christ as the Son of God. That makes me laugh. No, Christianity is not dependent on Apostles' Creed. True Christianity is represented by the party, and the German people are now called by the party, and especially the Führer, to a real Christianity. The Führer is the herald of a new revelation.
The state and its Führer, which would serve as the new gods for the masses, would also be used to attack the foreign Jews of both Bolshevik and capitalist varieties, and even today Hitler continues to be lionized for carrying out this noble battle. Ignoring the fallacy that Hitler's financial existence was entirely made possible through the same international bankers who had simultaneously financed Bolshevism, let's take a moment to review the smoking gun piece of evidence that made all of this possible in the first place. That is to say, the protocols of the learned elders of Zion.
Okay. All right. I think that's a good place to end our little introductory teaser for the film. And I have gotten this from so many different locations, the idea that Hitler was really this authentic, true Christian nationalist. It comes up again and again, only wanting peace. He only wanted to eliminate the Jew bankers and then bring peace to the world. He wanted to eliminate the Freemasonic agencies, secret societies, which are plaguing humanity, and bring peace to the world. And whether it was through the voices of people like Darryl Cooper, a hack historian who's been given a lot of play by even Tucker Carlson, who I think should know better, and yet who brought in these types of narratives into a vast audience of tens of millions of people not that long ago. It's just not true. You actually look at the evidence, and it's plentiful that Hitler despised Christianity. He saw it only, like is mentioned there, as a tool for control, but ultimately as something to be destroyed, and ultimately something which has hurt the beautiful, raw, Nordic, Teutonic, pagan folk spirit of the people pre-Christianity, that it stifled and imposed moral values and constraints on the natural boldness and heroic nature of the Viking core, nature religions that are the German people. So anyway, and this was stuff that Wagner was also pushing in his Wagnerian cult. That's what Bulwer Lytton was enmeshing within his stories, like Rienzi, that Wagner later on took on and made into an opera which radicalized a young Hitler into this weird way of thinking. But that wasn't random. There were always sorcerers, black magicians from above, steering and shaping the mind, not just Hitler, but many of his leading complotists, as they say, co-conspirators in the German culture. So what we're going to do is, in the next chapter, when people watch the whole movie, they'll be introduced to a mountain of evidence demonstrating not only that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion is, and always was, a hoax, but that, as the title of the chapter implies, a theosophist hoax. It was something overseen by leading members of the esoteric section of Madame Blavatsky's theosophists, enmeshed within the French branch of the Okhrana, the Russian secret police, as well as within Russia, who had risen to positions of spiritual advisors to the Romanov czars, to Nicholas II, and his wife, the granddaughter of Queen Victoria herself, who ended up actually believing that this was an exposure, a smoking gun, proving the mass global Jewish conspiracy to enslave the world, of which, again, as we will prove, it was always a hoax. It was a limited hangout. So we're going to go through some of that in great detail in the next chapter. And again, thank you, Eleanor. Eleanor has been letting people know that she has had 5, now it's down to 3 subscriptions to give out to my Substack. They're 30-day subscriptions. So if you message Eleanor by using she made her email available. I won't make it available here vocally, but it is available for anybody looking at the chat right now. You can message her and ask for your own 30-day subscription that will get you full access to everything, the lectures that we host every Sunday, and articles that are behind paywall, but especially also this new film, which is also behind a paywall. So that's something to point out. Garrett also says, I have free subs available too. That's pretty cool. So thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Garrett. So get in touch with Eleanor and or Garrett and see if they can hook you up so you can watch this movie. And if you can't watch the movie through one of their free subscriptions, go ahead and it's like $5, which isn't a huge investment. It's $5 a month, and you can cancel at the end of a month, or just go to the other website I was mentioning that you can rent or buy it as well. There wasn't a question from, I think it was Eleanor earlier that I highlighted, where Eleanor asks, one immediate question that I have is, how did the Dulles brothers become so powerful? That is something I'd like to figure out in more detail too, Eleanor. In all honesty, there's a lot of opacity around their early bio of what made these two creatures so useful as servants of empire. I know that early on they were brought into sun-worshipping rituals in Germany, even during World War I. These were rituals that were being directed from a certain place in Switzerland called Monte Verita, the Mountain of Truth, or otherwise known as Oscona. That's an elite sort of bohemian grove. It used to be the center of the Black Mass of Central Europe in the Middle Ages. and it never really let go of its traditions. We're talking serious dark pagan stuff here. Diana, Circe, worshipping covens, a lot of, Templar witchcraft as well. The Cathar Knights were members of that sect, would go and carry out ritual. There's a few of these occult zones of influence. That was a big one. And it continued, that legacy was really picked up in a big way under Mikhail Bakunin, who is a satanic figure, a founder, actually a heroic figure in the libertarian networks. If you look at intellectual libertarians, they tend to treat Bakunin, who was the founder of the Monteverita sect in the 1880s, as a major inspiration for his brand of anarcho-syndicalism. Yet this became a hub where people like Aldous Huxley, H.G. Wells, leading occultists of the early 20th century carried out ritual. Carl Jung was a big one, and he was carrying out sun-worshipping rituals to revive the ancient solar deities, the solar cults of ancient pagan times that he saw as the only way to redeem humankind. That is why, after all, that we cannot forget that though Carl Jung has been rehabilitated and whose ideas have been really amplified in gaining a lot of respect in our current society, he was, in the 1930s, from 1933 all the way up until 1939, the president of the German Psychology Association. And so he and his ideas of the collective unconscious, of the different archetypes, which do have a degree of truth to them, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain motive and a certain spin that he was giving a lot of his truths. These were used directly by the Nazi high command to organize the mass collective dream, to organize mass behavior, mass imaginations, and to invoke certain aspects of the persona in the target audience that was being influenced by the Nazis, following Jungian principles, which, as far as I could see, I don't think that Jung, while he was in that position, working directly with leading Nazi SS officers and psychiatrists, I don't think he was ever really of the view that Hitler was a bad thing. It was only later on, after World War II, that a new rebranded image of Jung was sold to the world by Alan Dulles, who was always his student. He did work at the OSS and served Dulles during the war. Dulles destroyed many of the records of Jung during the war that was accumulated by American patriotic intelligence figures. So they were conveniently annihilated, and then a new story of Jung's heroic efforts as an OSS agent working for Dulles was created literally out of nothing to make him seem as though he was playing the role of a secret good guy. From Switzerland, which is where Alan Dulles was also based, in Bern, Dulles famously destroyed the records of many assets that were colluding with their American and European counterparts in England, where we know that there was a major occult fascist section within the aristocracy, within the political machinery, that Dulles was always interfacing very closely with, both Dulles brothers. So whether it was through their time at Alt Sullivan and Cromwell, which then, just as today, is a massively important law firm for the elite of the elite, privy to very secretive and powerful information that they are devoted to protecting as a machinery of the the secret government, or whether it was at other times when he was brought into more official, direct political roles within the deep state, along with his brother, who worked very closely under. Anyway, there's a whole story there. More to say, but it's an important question because, again, Dulles plays such a big role, and also in being taken down by John F. Kennedy, who was trying to revive the better spirits of America, as people know, and fired not just Dulles, but his right-hand man, Charles Cabell, the deputy director of the CIA, as well as Richard Bissell, who was the head of the Office of Policy Coordination, the psychological warfare branch that was in charge of targeted assassinations of leaders, including American leaders, as well as MKUltra, which both Dulles and Bissell oversaw. as well as the UFO Psyop 2, which Bissell played a big role with Dulles and overseeing as we've gone through in previous episodes of this show, Breaking Free of Psyops, over the past weeks. Bissell did found and run Area 51 as an experimental test facility, and an entire mythos of new legends that were sold to people about what they were supposed to interpret as their sensory data when they would look out their windows and see experimental drones and aircraft being flown. What was it they were seeing? Well, Dulles and Jung, following Jung's advice provided to him early on in the early 50s and then published in the Social Engineering Handbook, Flying Saucer, A Thing Seen in the Sky, which Jung published in 1958, did provide them a recipe book to create a new set of stories for the mass audience to replace basically God, to create the foundations around which a new set of gods could be introduced into the collective unconscious, perhaps assisted with a bit of shock therapy. Yeah, so there is that. Let's go back and look to see if there were any other questions that popped up or thoughts from the live audience. So let me just scroll on down here. What do we got here? A lot of people are participating in calling up for some free Substacks. That's pretty cool. I'm still just scrolling here. Well, I'm not doing a good job scrolling at all. I don't know why I'm Okay, so not seeing any new questions. That's all right. What I can do is now just show something that I'd like to also introduce. So let me do a little screen share here. Stop screen. Let's do a new screen share. Because as I mentioned, there's 2 Black Sun books. So this is the Black Sun Rising is the name of this video. My wife in 2024 published The Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set, the history of the Anglo-American roots of fascism from the end of the 19th century all the way up until the present through Operation Gladio. So Cynthia's book is a behemoth. It's an extremely important read that this film complements. And also our new book, our new special report. It's a 8.5 by 11, 200-page document. There's a hardcover version is in full color that's on Amazon, as well as a paperback version that you can also get. But I'm going to show people just a quick sample of what they should be looking for, and maybe just go through the table of contents so people are familiar with the content here. Let me just make sure that I can get this to the screen, add to stage. So this is a PDF version of the thing itself. Let me see if I can get the whole thing on there. All right, there we go. Get that. Oops, too small. Okay, Black Sun Rising. So this is what you should be looking for on Amazon. It's a fantastic picture. I don't know which photographer took that amazing picture of Hitler, but he should get, or I hope he got, some Pulitzer Prize, because I think it really does bring out the fanatical occult soul of Hitler so well. I don't know what he was actually doing. He was probably just giving an animated speech, I guess, in front of an audience. But we took some creative license and introduced it into the backdrop behind the massively growing Russian mystic Madame Blavatsky, and a backdrop of a shadowy, ghostly scene from a forest, above which is the Black Sun symbol, a very important symbol of both runic German theosophical lore and a little, for those who might miss it, a little UFO, a little flying saucer there that we threw in, since we do have a chapter on Theosophists, Nazis, and Nazis go to space. So let me just quickly scroll in here so people could see some of the contents. Again, it's 200 pages. And for a thick special report, that's quite a lot. But we have here a chapter on the Crusades. Just going through, because if you don't know the Crusades, you can't really understand World War II. You can't understand what went on since 9/11, or since the creation of the neoconservative movement by a bunch of unreconstructed Nazis. You won't understand what that was in the Cold War. You won't really understand why 9/11 was done and why a new Crusader mindset was infused into the conservative audience base, which had formerly been truly pro-Lincoln, pro-McKinley patriots that got co-opted by a new ideology, like a virus taking over a host. So that Crusades thing does, it does take you through, I think, a pretty important way of looking at the Black Deaths, plural, I should say, the periodic, the evidence of poisoning of wells, not even by Jews, as has been popularly recounted by those who have been wishing to use the entire Jewish people as a convenient scarecrow, a hate absorber throughout history, but rather by an organized, centralized on what. So you have a network of witch covens, right? What's going on today with Marina Abramovich, that doesn't come out of a vacuum. That has a historic precedent. What the founding fathers and the mentors of young Benjamin Franklin were actually dealing with Rosicrucian directed witch covens across the colonies, that was real. That was real. There were definitely massive abuses of inquisitors who were very abusive, who killed a lot of innocent people. That's not to be ignored, but the point is, it's not so one-dimensional. There actually were very dark black magic rituals being carried out in a big way during the early phases, all the way throughout the pre-American Revolutionary period that continued in different ways. They had to go a bit more underground after the American Revolution, but they then came back with a big coming out party in the 19th century, leading up to what caused and catalyzed the Civil War, with people like Albert Pike as one of many witches that had taken power of had taken over many of the Freemasonic lodges under the guise of the Scottish Rite. So there's a whole history that ties into what theosophy always was, what the spiritualist movement always was, what the Great Awakening movement of the channelers under, Anne Lee in the 18th century, and the earlier precursors to that of Annie Hutchison, the enemy of John Winthrop Jr., who was another free grace antinomianist who was effectively a Gnostic channeler, creating her own covens that were always in opposition to not just Christianity, but the very spirit of natural law upon which anything viable that I could see morally or intellectually humanity has ever accomplished is something which is anathema to this parasite, which goes back to ancient times. So the Crusades you can't understand that. You can't understand anything about the secret orders or what the American revolutionaries were fighting against if you don't look at the Crusades and how the population reduction schemes of controlled wars, battles against other civilizations instead of dialogue and understanding, and periodic poisoning to cull the human herd, the excess population, how that was a part of the Crusade management back in those days. After that, we've got the Protocols of Zion hoax in greater detail than we even go through in the film. Hitler's bankers is another chapter of how those very Wall Street and London and Swiss bankers that still run the world today, that were never punished in Nuremberg, were directing the growth of the fascist war machine in Italy and in Germany, but also and beyond. We have Hitler's Aryan Christ and Reichsbible going through in great detail what was this nasty thing called the Reichsbible that Hitler had created, with new commandments to keep thy blood pure and honor thy Führer. We have Nazism as an esoteric society of black magicians, as another chapter in that, which is also going to be in the movie. And then Nazi Fifth Columns in America, Part 1, Crowleyites during World War I, and how the followers of Aleister Crowley were part of an intelligence apparatus that got the U.S. enmeshed into World War I, and that even created World War I itself, with vast infiltration into the German as well as into the American and British political intelligentsia. Part 2 of that, Nazi Fifth Columns, deals with the American Nazi movement in the 30s into the 40s. Chapter 8 on the Theosophical Nazis Go to Space introduces how all of those fascist operatives and movements had theosophical origins in America, and how they all founded the UFO cults immediately after World War II was finished. They all were rebranded, whether it was George Adamski, whether it was George Hunt Williamson, whether it was the I Am movement of Guy and Edna Ballard. Guy Ballard had died by that time, and their Saint Germain cult. that all profess to have Venusian, blonde, Aryan super beings cosmically communicating with the chosen elite of the elites, these high adept clairvoyants to give a new dispensation, a new revelation to humankind. That all became part of that story. And before I do anything else here, I just realized there's something I want to do, which I forgot to do, which is to run a couple of ads, because today's show could not exist without a few sponsors here. And usually I do this at the beginning, and I was so enthusiastic to get into the show that I totally forgot to introduce who made today's show possible. So let's look at a couple of ads here, one of which is from our good friends over at Tamarack Gardens. So here they are.
Your body doesn't need more synthetic fixes. It needs real plant medicine. Wild herbs are packed with minerals, adaptogens, and healing compounds your body actually recognizes and can use, supporting energy, immunity, and balance from the inside out. At Tamarack Garden, our supplements bring these overlooked weeds and wildflowers back into your daily routine. Don't just manage symptoms, support your body and eat your weeds. Head to tamarackgarden.com for $10 off your order of $50 or more when you use code BADLANDS at checkout.
All right. Thank you, Tamarack Gardens. And let's look at River now. River BTC.
Your bank kept $1,600 from you in 2025. You probably didn't notice. Now multiply that by millions of Americans. That's over $433 billion in interest the banks kept. Your money goes in. Banks put it to work. They make record profits. You get almost nothing in return. And when they blow up, guess who has to bail them out? So what are you supposed to do? Ask politely? Wait? Accept that this is just how banking works? Or you could put your money where it works for you. On River, your cash earns 3.3%, paid in Bitcoin. Earning Bitcoin gives your money even more room to grow. And it's just as easy as how you bank today. You can get paid, pay your bills, and access your money anytime. Start banking with Bitcoin on River.
Badlandsmedia.tv/river. You will not regret it.
All right. Thank you, River. So, all right. As I was going through the table of contents, let's just get back on that just so people don't, can get the whole idea, the Gestalt, as they say in German, in their mind. A Gestalt just being a unifying idea that has many parts to it, but the parts are often, or the whole is often lost when people focus too much on the parts and they forget to keep in mind the question, how is this part connected to a whole and fulfills a purpose? So I don't want people to lose that in this case as well. So looking over here, we have Theosophical Nazis Go to Space. And I mentioned here Nazi Fifth Columns in America, Part 3, with a focus on Technocracy Incorporated, dealing basically with the Aleister Crowley networks that Elon Musk's grandfather directly interfaced with in the 1920s into the 30s and into the 40s, peeking around Technocracy Incorporated that I think has a lot of uncomfortable elements to the revival of a techno-feudalism, which has become pretty popular amongst Silicon Valley transhumanist types in our current day. Chapter 10 was written by Cynthia. It's a big chapter on Operation Gladio, NATO's Fascist International. It is a fantastically important chapter that we included. Her work on that has been spectacular. So that will, if you don't fully understand Operation Gladio, you will after reading that chapter. Chapter 11 is on the Greater Israel as a British imperial project. So again, people think of Israel as the center, the cause of its own existence, the driving force of its own bad impulses. That's not true. The entire ideology of Zionism, especially the Greater Israel, maximalist, expansionist perversion of the Übermenschen idea, but wrapped in a Jewish skin suit, is not actually Jewish at all. This actually comes from religious engineers from the British High Command in Cambridge within Jesuitical networks that also played a very important role and that we expose in that particular chapter. It has a lot to do with Templarism, let me just say that, and the reconstitution ultimately of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which has always been, and the Solomon Temple takes on completely new meaning in the revival of Solomon's Temple as a center of human sacrifice, as well as demonology and angelology, but mostly demonology, is very big in occult circles. That's become, unfortunately, far too mainstream and far too politically active in our current world as far as shaping decisions. Then we've got the mystery of Khazaria, chapter 12. For those who have, Khazaria has been, again, a convenient story to explain all evil in this world. It's all Khazarian Jews as the Mordor, the place of pure evil that people would go and just get killed and raped and enslaved by the Jews from the north. And once again, as you can imagine, there's a lot of oversimplification and outright lies about this. Indeed, the Khazarian Empire is extremely important in universal history, but based on surviving actual records of those, especially Islamic scholars whose writings about Khazaria, while it still existed, have been preserved. Most of Khazaria's actual records have been wiped out. Most of, not all, but most. And what we do find actually showcases a very different story completely that is tied to a Renaissance dynamic of peace between Muslim, Christian, Chinese, as well as Jewish civilizational forces during the 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries before the Crusades ruined it all and sent everything back into a death spiral. So that's interesting. And that story is revealed there with a lot of quotes from, again, original sources. Chapter 13 is on the insights into the Shylock principle. So what was Christopher Marlowe doing by showcasing embedded within the format of stories, storytelling? What was he showcasing with the figure of Shylock? A certain Jew in Malta. Sorry, Shylock. That's Christopher Marlowe. Sorry. William Shakespeare was dealing with Shylock in the Merchant of Venice. And Christopher Marlowe was dealing with Barabbas, another Jewish financier in Malta. And what exactly were they exposing between what was Malta and its relationship with these Templar and Knights of Malta, Knights Hospitaller orders that used Malta as a hub, from Genoa as well, which was always allied with the Knights of Malta, whereas Venice, the place featured in Shakespeare's story, Venice was always allied with the Templars during the Genoan Venetian Wars. You had always the Templars allied with the Venetians and Genoa allied with the Hospitallers, and Genoa had a certain influence in constructing and constituting, after the Templars were taken down in 1317, the Isle of Malta, and Malta becoming the hub of the new Hospitallers after 1530. So what was being exposed in that location by Christopher Marlowe and by Shakespeare has a lot to do with what you're seeing right there on the screen. Specifically, these different city-state republics that were the carryovers of the old patrician class that ran the Roman Empire in Amalfi, in Genoa and Pisa, and especially in Venice. So this is extremely important to understand what took over England, what transformed England alchemically into the seat of a new empire, and that people like Shakespeare and Marlowe were fighting against. In the same way that Socrates and earlier Cicero, in the times of Athens and Rome, were also fighting against the transformation of their societies into the seats of a cult empire. And we end with the last chapter here on the Rothschild family as a case study in aristocratic honors, dynastic orders, and informal international hierarchies by my friend Mike King. This is not the pro-Hitler Mike King that I know is out there, by the way. This is a very different Mike King, who is a friend of mine and has done amazingly good work showcasing the old nobility, both in the past as well as their current present power structures from the different royal houses that can trace their lineages back to the Roman Empire and even before that, and also a lot of the Egyptian and other dynastic houses that I think are closer to a true seat of power than many people realize, and that utilize things like, again, chivalric institutions to pass on power codes and codes of conduct, including things like the Order of Garter, the Order of the Golden Fleece, and what have you, to the current day. So his article is a case study in just the Rothschild family, and I think it's just the most wonderful exposition of the Rothschilds, who have been conveniently set up as the international boogeyman that took over. That's the story, right? The story that was sold starting in the early 19th century by servants of the empire is this narrative that the monarchies of Europe are the victims. They're the victims of the big bad Jew bankers who took over the Bank of England and took over the royal houses with debt-based usury. And now all of the royal houses are enslaved to the Jews. And it's just not true. This goes through the exact lineage of each of the core leaders of the first, second, third, and fourth generation of the Rothschild dynasty, situates them within the context of how they have been used, rewarded, granted limited dynastic powers to the degree that they serve as frontmen, as agents of power or weapons in warfare to carry out economic warfare against targets, but that are always ultimately at the end of the day disposable. That's an extremely important fact, that they're ultimately disposable. They are not essential to anything at the end of the day. And there's a number of these what are called Hofjuden families that have been created, built up in order to receive the hate when things go awry and the townsfolk get angry and want revenge and pick up their pitchforks and their torches. Instead of going to the actual culprits who are lighting fires and ruining their lives, instead they're directed to the houses of the Sassoons, of other Jewish banking families, of which the Rothschilds are the most loudly advertised out there. So again, this is the story of James Mayer de Rothschild, of many others, and he shows a very useful bibliography for people who like doing extra mind work. But keep in mind, this is a nouveau riche, in the grand scheme of things, a nouveau riche family that really came onto the scene in the 1750s. You know, we're talking about old power that goes back to ancient Babylon, and people have been induced to think that this relatively new thing that was just rewarded and given influence in the 1740s, 50s is somehow the ultimate bad guy in the story. Not so. There's other things going on. What I didn't address as much as I would have liked to, and so maybe at some point I'll have to do a follow-up. These are just a couple of appendices, by the way, on the Nuremberg trials. What were the battles at Nuremberg? So there's a whole story there. Hitler's Tavistock connection as well. So here's a story written by Uwe Alschner, a friend of mine who's given some incredible classes and is a great researcher. He's put together a very nice short demonstration of the evidence showcasing that Hitler, even before he became a self-professed avatar of Odin, of Wotan, was a patient somehow being manipulated in England right next to the town of Tavistock. And there's a painting that became public, painted by Hitler, a watercolor featuring what looks to be an actual actually it is. It's an auto portrait of, or not an auto portrait, it's a self-portrait of Hitler sitting on this particular bridge, which was found in one of Hitler's vaults, was put on auction in, I think, 1948. And some astute observer noted that, hey, that bridge actually is brick for brick. The Clapper Bridge at Portsbridge. The Clapper Bridge at Portsbridge, which Hitler would have been at in 1910 and would have been joined by Rudolf Hess. So there's something in this Clapper Bridge at Portsmouth is a walk away. It's just a few miles away from the town of Tavistock, which was, as we all know, the center of global alchemy, masquerading as psychiatry during in the wake of World War I. So what exactly did he experience in this zone is up for debate. There's some questions to be asked, but there's a lot of evidence showcasing a very different picture of what made Hitler Hitler that didn't involve just simply him not getting accepted in art school and just hating the Jews. There's more to it than that. And Scientology and Satanists obviously is, well, it is what it is. This is a quick appendix dealing with some of the implications of the Black Magicians surrounding L. Ron Hubbard, including L. Ron Hubbard, or the evidence that L. Ron Hubbard himself saw himself as a follower of Crowley as he created his own UFO religion. So, and this is the back cover over here. So it's a fun book, and again, pretty thick. It's there's a lot going on in this thing. Here, let me just go back to my main screen, remove, and I hope that people enjoy the content of this thing. And I noticed that Garrett kicked in $5 saying this is the greatest show of all time. Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate the support immensely. Let me just scan on here through. Fuyoka 1958 says they're very interested in Hitler's bankers, and I apologize if I butchered your name. I'm so sorry, I didn't prepare. I should have practiced pronouncing your name first. Yeah, there's a whole big chapter of that, both in the book and also expounded upon at length in the documentary. And just order the book on Amazon. That's great. I'm happy that you did that. I hope you enjoy it. Just scanning through here. Any more subs left? So if anybody has a sub to provide to JD Wilborn, then help JD out. Help JD out. They want to watch some documentary. Okay, just as a little thing to make to feed my ego, my ego pleasure here. Lion of Britain says to Eleanor that they'd love to see this documentary, that I love his depth and research and the esoteric angle. That's thank you. I'm glad you're liking it. Just scrolling up a little bit more here. All right. So I think with that, I'm trying to think if there's anything really, really pressing. Yes. I just want really people to have it in mind that this is not about the past. It is about the present. And both the documentary as well as the book will showcase how the continuity of this agency has continued in dark and very nasty influence all the way up through the followers of the Ananalba leadership, which includes, but is not limited to, Colonel Michael Aquino, who does play a big role in this documentary as a figure who was carrying out Wewelsburg workings at Himmler's occult headquarters in Wewelsburg Castle in 1980 or 81. I think it was 80. In order to usher in, to invoke the demons of Set, to invoke the age of Set as the next phase of the Crowleyite revolution, which Michael Aquino always saw himself as the new patron saint of this new order. So Michael Aquino had a lot of influence, both in terms of creating and ushering in the revolution in military affairs that gave rise to a completely new brand of super soldier in America under the special forces, but also in terms of the takeover of policymaking, the introduction of ESP, remote viewing, Stargate projects, as well as electromagnetic weaponry to carry out cognitive mind wars against the populations both abroad but also of America itself. So yeah, this guy was not just a kook with crazy eyebrows and an obsession with Satanism. He was also a very high level figure who had a very high rank at the NSA, within military intelligence circles, within military army intelligence circles, and a pedophile who ran the Presidio child sex trafficking ring that came to light in the late 1980s, early 1990s, which is a sick story. But I don't think this guy fully ever disappeared from the scene, even after his alleged death in 2019. Yeah, 2019. So let's listen to another. I think we have one more ad that I neglected here. So let's go with SD Ghost here. What's this?
A long, long time ago, a raider went into a dangerous cave because he was on an adventure. Or like he smelled like an adventure. But the cave was protected by spiders and lizards. No, it was snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whatever it was, the raider wasn't scared of it because it was Ghost, the lotion raider. Then he found the golden deodorant. That's not deodorant, that's the tallow bar. It was soft disclosure. Ghost had exactly 1 second to switch it, or the whole cave explodes. And then the boulders started chasing him. Run, Ghost, run! Oh no, he dropped the soft disclosure. I got it. I understand its power now. That lotion is an important artifact and it belongs in every household. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code LotionWaiter for 15% off.
I never saw that before. That's amazing. I wish Gordon had warned me that this was a thing. Yeah, I gotta get your lotion. That's a brilliant ad. My God, how amazing. I'm gonna buy some of that lotion. Actually, that got me. That got to me. And I don't know who these kids are. Are these AI voices of children? Are these actual kids that were employed into this amazing commercial? I'm gonna find out. I'm after I'm done the show. Actually, I'm gonna watch that again. That was so hilarious. All right. I just noticed that John in Connecticut. For some reason, I'm not actually seeing anybody who makes a donation. I don't see them on StreamYard. So I do apologize if anybody does a donation to this show or to the documentaries that we're making. And if I don't read out your thing, it's because they're not showing up here. But I do have Rumble also open on my other computer, so I can see it this time. And John in Connecticut just gave $10. Thank you, John. And says the depth of your research nearly unparalleled in my experience. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's high praise. Thank you, John. Very, very nice of you. Okay. So I think, yeah, there's always more to say and more threads to pull on, but I think I want to leave people a little bit hungry, a little bit thirsty to go get a drink of some documentary. And the night is still young. So check it out. And I hope that people who were able to get those free complimentary subs from Eleanor and from I forget who else were able to make that happen. And we'll see you all next week for probably, I think, what I'll end up doing, depending on what the world does. I mean, might change my decisions. But as of now, I think based upon what I did with Elon Musk and the origins of the occult social credit operation that his grandfather was initiating back in the 30s, 40s, and that incubated through apartheid South Africa, I think it would be appropriate to probably break down in greater detail this whole Palantir thing and what is Peter Thiel, what did he emerge out of in South Africa, the elite, the most elite schools and neighborhoods, and what was going on there? What's up with South Africa, and what's up with Peter Thiel, and what's up with Palantir? So yeah, I think we'll do that probably next Monday. And hopefully patriots watching both in America and abroad might be able to not fall for Psyops when they get fed to them on a silver platter. So thank you everybody for watching. And for those who don't yet know, the GART, the next GART is coming up, GART number 12. What is it? June 25th to 28th. And it's going to be in Deadwood, South Dakota. So it's for the 12th stop in the Great American Restoration Tour. And people can get those tickets at badlandsmedia.tv/events. So you can do that. And that's it. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.